All right. Thank you, Mark. All right, so welcome to the February 2024 meeting of the Governor's Broadband Task Force. We have a pretty long agenda today, included in that are some presentations. And one of the things we do as we prepare for these meetings is send out homework that we ask you to respond to. We didn't get a lot of responses this time. And I just want to remind everybody that that's helpful for the folks at the PSC office as they're trying to customize the presentations, for example, we have today to answer specific questions we may have for the group. So please try to find some time to respond to those homework assignments when they're sent out. We try to make them very brief and painless, but it's really to help us make sure that you get the most value out of these meetings. With that, we can kick the meeting off. I'm going to hand it back over to Mark, and Mark will handle the welcome and housekeeping as well as public comments. And then after that, we're going to have a few remarks from Commission Chair Strand. So Mark, I'll hand it back to you for public comments and other housekeeping items.
All right, great, thanks. All right, great to see everyone, and thanks for attending. Welcome to the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Today is Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. I would just like to remind everyone that this is a public meeting and that it's being recorded. A meeting agenda is available on the Public Service Commission events calendar and also on the task force webpage. Also, in an effort to maintain audio quality, please mute yourself when not speaking. Also ask that members of the public be mindful of their audio and remain muted throughout the duration of the meeting, other than during the public comment period. Okay, I'll go ahead and do roll call for those that are members of the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Bob Abrams?
Yes, sir.
Biko Baker? Kwame Barnes? Marta Bechtel? She let me know she wouldn't be here. Brittany Beyer?
Present.
Sal Carranza?
Here.
Lori Collins?
Present.
Doug Cox let me know he wouldn't be here. Angie Dickinson let me know she wouldn't be here. Emily Dittmar?
Here.
Russ Falkenberg?
Here, Mark.
Celeste Flynn?
Here.
Chris Hershong? Justin Huebner let me know he wouldn't be here. Gail Hike?
Present.
Barbara Koldos?
Here.
Chris Meyer?
Here.
State Senator Mark Kleiner staff? Jose Martinez?
Present.
State Representative Mersaner staff? State Representative Ratcliffe or staff? State Senator Pfaff or staff? Rachel Shumlin?
Present.
Steve Schneider?
Here.
Michelle Schuler? Brett Schupner?
Here.
Chet Streeb?
Here.
And Chad Young?
Here.
Okay, I don't believe I missed anyone. Is there anybody's name that I did not call that's a member of the task force? All right, I'll keep an eye on the attendance list. Now is the time where we will allow for public comment. This is the sole opportunity for the members of the public to make a comment during this meeting. Members of the public may soon unmute and make a public comment should they desire. I do ask that the public comment remain brief and also pertain to the subject of broadband access. You may also utilize the chat function in Zoom to let us know you would like to make a public comment as well. I will ask for public comment now. Second call for public comment. And last call for public comment. All right, hearing none. As a note, written public comment is also accepted on an ongoing basis. We have directions on how to do so on our task force webpage, along with other information like meeting agendas, recordings, and updates. I'll hand it back to Chris to lead us through the rest of the agenda. Chris?
All right, thank you, Mark. First up today, we've got some welcoming remarks from Commission Chair Strand. And so I'll hand this over to Commission Chair Strand. I believe they've connected.
Yep. Hi, Mark. It's me. It says I'm Kara because we're having, ironically, some IT issues today, but thank you. It's Good afternoon, and thank you for the warm welcome today. As Mark mentioned, I'm Summer Strand, the chairperson of the Wisconsin Public Service Commission, and I'm very excited to be here today to introduce myself to you and kick off your meeting as you continue your important work to bridge Wisconsin's digital divide. I'll just give you guys a little bit of background about myself, and then talk a little bit about the work of the task force and some important next steps that are coming up, and then just conclude. But most of the stuff is stuff that you guys are well aware of, but I just want to make sure that you understand that even though Chair Vach is no longer with us, that we are absolutely committed to this, and we are so thankful for you all and your participation with this important task force and this important issue. So by way of background, I was born and raised in Wisconsin and attended college at UW-Madison, where I studied history and political science. I loved being here, but realized that if I was going to study for the next 3 years, that I wanted to attend law school somewhere warm, which is how I ended up at Arizona State University College of Law. Upon graduation, I did miss the 4 seasons, as crazy as it sounds, and moved back to Wisconsin, where I started my career in the state Senate. From 2008 to 2010, I served as chief of staff to a state senator and helped clerk the Senate Energy and Utilities Committee, the State Building Commission, and the Transportation Committee. I didn't know then, but these formative experiences in the Senate did significantly shape my subsequent career path. So after I left the Senate in 2011, I joined the executive branch, where I served as an administrator of the Division of Facilities Development in the Wisconsin Department of Administration. Here I oversaw the state building program, which encompasses all of the vertical construction the state undertakes at its state-owned facilities across Wisconsin. And that portfolio is pretty vast and includes everything from Camp Randall to our correctional facilities and our beautiful state parks. In 2016, I left the DOA to become the Director of Government Affairs for a Wisconsin-based construction and engineering company that specializes in bridge and road construction throughout the upper Midwest. So I served in that capacity for just under 7 years when Governor Evers appointed me to the Public Service Commission in March of last year. So I was very excited for this opportunity to serve on the PSC and feel that the position of commissioner does align really well with my legal background and the public and private sector experience that I have. And again, these prior roles did help kind of shape my career and serve me well for the current position and the types of work that we do here. So I do now serve as the chairperson of the PSC, which is a dual role where you serve as a commissioner and also as the head of the agency. And I'm also really excited to share with you that as of last week, the commission voted on some new roles for delegations that the commissioners will oversee, and I will be the delegated commissioner on broadband issues for our state at the PSC. And so I'm very excited to be more involved in this critical work and work closely with Alyssa and Rory and all of our great broadband office staff colleagues. And again, the PSC is staffed by a ton of subject matter experts and committed public servants, and I feel so fortunate to be able to work with them on all the areas that we oversee. And then I also just want to echo that I'm very grateful for your service to the state as members of this Broadband Access Task Force. And thank you especially to Chris Meyer for your leadership on the task force, and to all the members for the contributions that you all have made toward improving internet access and affordability in Wisconsin. And I know, as you all know, that we have been able to make tremendous progress since Governor Evers created this task force in 2020. He has allocated more than $345 million in state and federal funds to expand high-speed internet, which ensures that more than 395,000 homes and businesses will have new or improved service. And because of your expertise and dedication to this work, we have improved broadband mapping and data, made available technical assistance to local communities, and improved internet adoption and affordability throughout various initiatives, and so much more. As you're aware, the last 3 task force reports have captured these achievements, and the next report, which is due on June 30th, will cover your progress on the task force's top priorities and summarize the plans to implement President Biden's Internet for All initiative. Excuse me. There's a lot of work ahead of us, and the Internet for All initiative does provide significant opportunities to connect all Wisconsinites. So this next task force report will highlight the recommendations developed after months of planning and stakeholder input to ensure that the best use of these federal funds and to reduce any barriers to deployment of the funds. We also know that internet affordability remains a big issue for many Wisconsinites. And unfortunately, the likely end of the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, does create a significant barrier to really achieving internet for all. We hope that the task force will consider the impact that the end of the ACP program will have on internet affordability, especially for low-income families, and to help make recommendations to ensure that the internet is available and affordable for all. Again, I think affordability is a really important piece to all of this. In conclusion, as you know, you are responsible for advising the governor and the state legislature on broadband actions and policy, including strategies for successfully expanding high-speed internet access to every residence, business, and institution in the state. I'm proud of how much you've already accomplished, and I do look forward to learning more from the task force as you prepare this fourth report due in June. Thank you so much for having me today, and you sit in for a little while and listen if that's okay.
Well, of course it's okay, and thank you. We appreciate that. And I will echo your comments about the PSC staff. They've been amazing for the task force to work for, so we're really excited to continue doing this work through 24.
That's great. Thank you.
Moving on in the agenda, we have a PSC update, another PSC update. This one, though, is going to be from Alyssa, and it's going to be focused on BEAD Digital Equity and Capital Project Fund. Alyssa.
Hi, thanks everyone. Happy February. So this is what I'm going to call the edge of your seat update, because everything is so close, but not quite there. And so I just am going to give a lot of updates that are going to feel maybe not as satisfying as they should. Our BEAD Volume 1, that's sort of the challenge process and how we determine which locations in the state are eligible for curing, is still in review with the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA. We have gone through a couple rounds of curing. We're feeling very confident as a staff that it's just some fine details. I will say we are one of a smaller subset of states that is doing some types of challenges related to fixed wireless service that's making our Volume 1 more complex and a little bit more time consuming. And so BEAD Volume 1 in review, not approved. BEAD Volume 2, that's our subgranting process, same exact story. And we're actually hoping that Volume 2 is not really approved until we are well on the way of our challenge process. So we're closer to our eligibility list. So our Internet for All, our BEAD program, that's the big billion-dollar program. Everything's submitted. We're in that sort of fine grain tuning. It's getting very close. For capital projects, the state has sort of two grants. One is called Broadband Infrastructure. I'm sorry, our names are so boring. It makes it hard to hold on to. Those grants, we received the application. They've been reviewed by staff. They will be in front of our commission late winter, early spring. It's Wisconsin. It's pretty much late winter, early spring now. So they will be in front of our commission very soon, and the commission will make awards regarding capital projects, broadband infrastructure. So task force members can expect to see some announcements about that in the coming weeks. Broadband also for capital projects, the state got money for digital connectivity and navigators. And so this is a grant program that will provide devices, internet or Wi-Fi and MDUs, which is really apartment buildings, and digital navigators to make use of that equipment, to make use of those the equipment for people. And that grant round is expected to open not late winter, early spring, but late spring, early summer. We're always on kind of mushy timelines, but you can expect to see that grant program. And again, that grant program lifts many task force recommendations. There's digital navigators in it. There's devices that meet the needs of end users. There's connecting underconnected lower income apartment buildings. So you can see some of your recommendations from past reports lifted into that grant program. It will be formally launched again, late spring, early summer. Finally, digital equity. Digital equity is the other half of Internet for All. So it's BEAD and digital equity. The state has completed their digital equity plan. It is in review with NTIA. This is a common theme. Actually, no, NTIA is on this call, so we can all look at that square if you want. It is in review, but that grant program is over. And soon the federal government will announce 2 additional digital equity programs. One is called Capacity, and that is a formula that comes to the state. And the other is Competitive, and that means any entity across the nation can compete for it. And we expect those to be, again, sort of spring and summer announcements, and then with the programs developed throughout 2024. So lots of exciting grant programs coming. Chair Strand said it, but I do want to say again, the Affordable Connectivity Program is not accepting any enrollments. There has been no additional funding. The 420,000 households in Wisconsin that have that service, it is likely to be depleted and end in April. And that should be top of mind because it's sort of part of this federal funding package. And I think those are the updates I was supposed to give from the broadband office. So I'm going to pass it back to Mark. Thank you.
I think you meant Chris, but that's okay.
Yeah, that was the same thing you meant, Chris.
Sorry. I was looking at Mark and thinking Chris.
That's not a problem. I figured it out pretty quick. Thank you, Alyssa. Moving on to the next item in the agenda, we have a presentation from DPI on adoption of broadband and affordability impact on schooling. And Rachel Shumlin is going to be doing this presentation. Take it away, Rachel.
Thank you, Chris. Let me just share my screen here. You can let me know if you're seeing everything okay. Can you hear okay? Excellent. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Rachel Shumlin, and I'm an education consultant at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to provide an update and share information today with the task force about student adoption of broadband and affordability and the impact on schooling. When we think about student access to broadband, we think about educational equity, and educational equity is deeply connected to digital equity. And when we define digital equity, we're talking about student access to a device for learning, as well as sufficient internet access so that they can access high quality learning materials anywhere, anytime. And so some people talk about that as the homework gap, digital equity gap. That's what we're referring to. And DPI has been working with schools and helping schools collect information and use data on student access to the internet and devices. This is actually the fourth year that DPI is helping schools with this data collection. There are a series of questions that families can answer during their back to school registration. So at that time of the school year when families are verifying phone numbers and address information, there are a few questions that they can answer as well. This is an optional data collection. So not every school district participates, but most do. And not every family participates, but many do. So the questions that we ask are about what kind of device the student is using most often to complete homework and complete schoolwork at home. Who provides the device to the student? Is it, school provided, personal device? And then is it a shared device or not? Then there are 4 questions about internet access. Can the student access the internet on their primary learning device at home? If they're not able to access the internet, we ask if it's because of availability of a connection or the affordability aspect. And then what type of internet service are they using? And then finally, can they stream video for learning? And so those are the questions that are asked. And in working with school districts to make this, school districts collect this information during their registration or back to school time, and then it feeds over into some dashboards that DPI has created. There's a public dashboard that we can look at, the data across the state, the aggregated data. And then there are secure dashboards where the school district has assigned specific staff members who can log in and see which students need assistance. And so the ways that schools are using this data is to better understand which children need resources and to be able to target resources to students in need. Also to be able to determine the most cost-effective connection solutions, being able to advocate for funding to close the gap, and then fulfilling any reporting requirements. And so an example of a reporting requirement is there was a funding source, an emergency funding source that came out where school districts had to do a needs assessment. And the districts that had collected this information and gathered it already had their needs assessment, and they were able to apply for funding to help close that gap. And so this is an example of what the WISE-Public dashboard looks like. The most recent data was submitted in December, and so our team is working on building the dashboard with the most recent data. But when we look at last year's information, 3% of students across the state responded that they did not have internet access. 16% responded that they did not have a dedicated device to use at home for learning. And 19% did not have an acceptable connection for streaming video. They couldn't stream video for learning, or they would have frequent interruptions. This is another view. This is the view, another public dashboard view, where you can see by school district. So last year, 336 school districts responded to this optional data collection and shared their information with DPI. It was pulled together into this dashboard. And from this link, you can select a school district. You can see what their response rate was. Let's say 90% of the households in the school district responded. Then you can drill down and see of those that did not have access, how many in that school district said it was because of availability of a connection versus the affordability piece. So from here, this is helpful for local broadband planning groups and looking at the data publicly, but the schools also have an additional secure place where they can log in and drill down to the individual student. And then let's say affordability is the issue that the household is reporting, then the school district can target resources to help close that affordability gap and get those families connected. One of the ways that the schools are able to pay for connections is through some of the emergency funding that they've had access to. And I'll get into that in a minute. Some of that funding is ending, unfortunately, because it was emergency funding. But DPI set up with CISA purchasing something called the Digital Learning Bridge. And this was statewide negotiated discounts for internet, hardware, software, and cybersecurity related things. So if a school district wanted to purchase wireline connections or fixed wireless connections or mobile hotspot connections for families, they could do that through this digital bridge. And then the connection was going to the household and the bill was coming to the school district. And this was for school district to vendor purchasing. This was not something families could apply to directly, but it was one way to take advantage of statewide purchasing and discounts for school districts. Some of the funding that schools were using to pay for these connections, one of them is called the ESSER funding. And this funding provided devices as well as internet access for students. And it has to be encumbered, which means you have to decide how you're spending it by September 30th. So that one is ending. Another major funding source was the Emergency Connectivity Fund, again, for devices and internet connections for students and library patrons. Again, this funding source will be ending in June. And then there's funding called the McKenna-Venti Title IX funding that helps support students experiencing homelessness. That funding will continue. That is one funding source that will still be there. Other sources of funding include through E-rate. School bus Wi-Fi is now E-rate eligible. So that's one way that schools can help close that gap for students, is to set up Wi-Fi on their school buses. And the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, is considering as well making hotspots E-rate eligible. This would replace that emergency funding, ECF funding that's ending, but there's been no FCC action yet, and so there's no start date set. With both the school bus Wi-Fi and potentially these hotspots through E-rate, that's it's kind of like a match program in the sense that schools receive a discount on the cost, but then they have to pay for that non-discounted portion. And so this can be a challenge because schools have to take funding from another source to create the match or to pay the non-discounted portion of that. DPI did write comments in support of adding hotspots to E-rate. Again, the FCC needs to take action on that before it would become reality. Schools were also encouraging households to connect with temporary funding sources that were available. The Wisconsin Help for Homeowners is a way that households could apply to this program and get assistance with any arrears or overdue internet bills that they might have, and that might have been a challenge for them with getting a connection. I just checked the website this week. It looks like that program applications have to be submitted in the next couple of weeks here by March 8th. And then the Affordable Connectivity Program, which we heard from Alyssa and others about, that program, unless it gets additional funding, will be ending. And that's, again, a program that families would apply for directly. And so some of the things that we're going to continue to do at DPI is we're going to continue to promote the Internet Discount Finder. So although ACP is ending, several providers in Wisconsin do offer income-based discounts. And so we want to help schools with communication to make sure that families are able to connect with that through the Internet Discount Finder and not lose internet connection that they might have through another program that's ending. We're also going to continue to encourage schools and libraries to collaborate with their local broadband planning and digital equity planning groups. We have some great examples of that happening around the state. And then also finding ways to braid funds with other funding sources. So we heard about the NTIA Digital Equity Grant Program. We're expecting to learn more about that. And then DOA has a program called Flexible Facilities Program. And that might be helpful for libraries with potentially setting up healthcare in libraries. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. I did forget to mention, if you're not aware, DPI is also the state agency that supports and oversees public libraries in the state of Wisconsin. That's an important connection to make. And Chris or Kristen, I'm not sure, you want to jump to questions? That's the end of the information that I had to share with the group.
Yep, I can take that. So first, thank you, Rachel. For the group, questions for Rachel on what she's presented to us?
Hey, Rachel, this is Sal Carranza. One of the things that you mentioned is the internet in the buses, that unless the schools take over this, they won't be funding, correct?
So internet for school buses is something that schools can apply for through E-rate. Yes, they can apply for it. They have to go out. That deadline is coming up quickly. It can be with school-owned buses or buses that they're leasing through a private company. But the school would have to go out to bid for that through the E-rate process before February 28th. So they have like another week or so to go out to bid for that.
And from your perspective, what is the main purpose of having internet on the buses?
Yeah, so there are some requirements with internet on buses. It would need to connect back to the school's content filter. To be filtered. It's for educational purposes only. Yes, it's a very, there are some very restrictive rules with that to make sure that it's for learning, and that's what E-rate is intended for.
So students in particular, students in, a little later years can actually access educational content while they are driving home. Some students take an hour or more and be able to get home after school. Is that why?
Exactly. And it would cover in rural areas where the router on the bus would need to connect to multiple providers in order to have coverage. That is also an eligible piece.
I guess. Thank you.
Yes, good question.
Rachel, I won't ask you for numbers, but did the FCC's Emergency Connectivity Fund provide any noticeable revenue to DPI? I know that it's a it's a program that has not received an awful lot of applications in Wisconsin.
So in Wisconsin, the ECF is something that the schools would apply for directly. And yes, there was over $60 million applied for by Wisconsin schools and libraries, and primarily that went to get devices, not internet connections.
Great. I didn't think it was that large. Thank you.
Yes, and also, Bob, just to follow up, some districts are really reluctant to apply for funding for internet connections because they were concerned about then knowing that it was an emergency fund, that they'd have to then pull that back or take that connection away from a household.
Other questions for Rachel?
Rachel, this is Jose. Thank you again for the presentation. Great presentation, great information. You mentioned quite a few programs that are looking at phasing out. Has there been any school districts that have reached out to your office saying, well, this is going to be detrimental? We really rely on this service for our families, or our students, or kids. And so therefore, is there any funding out there that can help us? Because we are going to be challenged without these additional resources that families can tap into.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't have specific data on the districts that have reached out, but it's definitely been a point of concern in conversations with school districts that these emergency funds will be ending. They're going to have to find ways to stretch out the devices that they have for repair and replacement of those devices. Internet connections, we're all waiting to see if that will be added to E-rate as a possible funding source for mobile hotspots. There are also some schools that have shared that they're working with their private philanthropy, their local education foundation or other local businesses that are providing funding to pay for connections for families. So that's another source that schools are looking to. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Rachel.
Okay.
Other questions for Rachel? Excellent. Well, again, thank you, Rachel. We appreciate your presentation today.
Thank you, Chris.
We'll move on to the next item in the agenda, which is also a presentation. This will be on Digital Equity Outreach Program, and we're going to have three presenters. We have David Burka from the United Way of Greater Milwaukee and Waukesha County's Tequity program. I had to look at that word. It kind of threw me. Tequity. I like that. Christy Waits from Northwest Wisconsin's Workforce Investment Board, and Tommy Hastings and Diana Rodriguez from Everyone On. And each presenter will have 5 minutes to present, and then for a total of 15 minutes, we'll do questions and answers at the end. So we can start with David.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you today. My name is Dave Burke. I'm the project manager for Tequity and Resource Equity at United Way of Greater Milwaukee and Waukesha County. So my office is in downtown Milwaukee. And I'm going to share with you today just a little bit about our activities as part of the Digital Equity Outreach Grant that we received last year. So bear with me while I just pull up my slide deck. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Equity, thank you. All right. So as part of this grant, we were focused on reaching as many people as we possibly could throughout Metro Milwaukee, Waukesha County, and Ozaukee and Washington counties as possible. Our United Way serves all 4 counties. And our priority was to have as much interactive time with just regular people that we possibly could to get their sense of what their experience is like with their internet. Is it affordable? Is it reliable? Is it quality for the things that they need to do? And how does that fit into the wider experience of anything related to digital equity? So the quality and the reliability of the devices that they use to access the internet, to do daily things in their lives, whether it's school, working remotely, personal or private business or endeavors. anything related to their own personal goals and well-being. So as part of this grant, we collaborated with several different organizations. There was the African American Leadership Alliance of Milwaukee, or ALEM. There's a group called InPower, which managed a significant part of the project of this executed through this grant. We worked with the Mexican Consulate, we worked with a company called Rock Software, and we worked with the Young Enterprising Society and the community within the corridor based in Milwaukee. The activities that we used for this project were digital surveying. So we had, I'll get to the surveying results in a little bit, but we had several thousand respondents, a couple thousand respondents to that survey. And then we had a bunch of community-based engagements where we met with people one-on-one, did presentations on internet equity, digital equity, and got a lot of feedback from residents that went right into the report for our grant. The audiences that we engaged included residents in cost-burdened zip codes, Spanish-speaking families, undocumented individuals, many faith-based communities, public and mental health networks, and higher education networks. So these are just a couple highlights of the survey results. We had over 2,700 respondents in total to our survey, which was very positive. We were hoping for a threshold of about 1,000 to 1,500, and so we were able to far surpass the goal. In the center, you'll see the results for the average monthly internet costs that the majority of respondents are paying. So most people are paying anywhere, at least most people who responded to our survey are paying anywhere between $41 and $60 per month. And then when it comes to actual access itself, most respondents are using both a Wi-Fi internet connection and internet on their device, as a smartphone or cell phone. Some key findings from the survey itself. Most respondents identified that the reason for having no internet in the home was that the internet options available to me are not affordable. The most identified reason for a customer selecting their internet service provider was it's the best option available, best priced option available. The two most identified forms of internet service type were cable and DSL. 49% of survey respondents ranked their internet service as either fair or poor. 51% of survey respondents ranked as either good or excellent. So it was a pretty even split there. The primary barriers to digital equity expressed during our community engagement events. Many participants felt that the internet services that they have on offer are not affordable, citing high costs relative to their incomes and their general opinion that high-speed internet should cost less. Location affects access to technology, as some areas have better infrastructure than others, creating disparities with respect to quality and availability. And then we also identified a pretty wide gap, and this was more through our actual engagement events that we had in the community, a pretty wide gap in the knowledge and ability to use technology effectively for their own benefit, and that included a lack of understanding about how to use the internet for a wide variety of activities. So just to close, I wanted to include a couple of recommendations that came out pretty clearly as part of our both our surveying and our engagement on the personal level, on the anecdotal level with people through our engagement activities. Recommendations would include implementing policies, statutes, and/or ordinances that reduce internet service costs. This, at least in our region, is the #1 barrier to people being able to adopt and access the internet. Full stop. That was the issue that came out more often than anything else. Policy strategies might include funding short-term limited subsidies. This is especially relevant in relative to what Rachel was saying earlier with the end of ACP, encouraging greater competition among internet service providers and/or requiring internet service providers to create and promote affordable quality internet packages for low-income households and/or zip codes. And then #2, continuing to financially support local digital equity ecosystems and organizations that do the actual on-the-ground work of educating low-income residents on and assisting them with internet adoption, online safety, and other essential digital skills. And we, as United Way in Milwaukee, we are not the only organization doing this work. And so empowering organizations like United Way and others to continue doing the work of person-to-person interaction and support is really, really crucial. That's the only way that we actually are going to get more people adopting a resource that, by their own report, is essential for them. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David. The next presenter will be Christy Waits from Northwest Wisconsin Workforce Investment Board. Christy.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me. Let me share my screen real quick. Going to a full screen. Hold on one second. There we go. Can everyone see that?
We can.
Okay, wonderful. Yep, my name is Christy Waits, and I work for the Northwest Wisconsin Workforce Investment Board. We are located up at the very tip, at the northern tip of Wisconsin. We serve 10 counties, so we include everything along the Lake Superior. We have Superior, which would be Douglas County. We have Ashland, we have Hayward, so kind of anywhere up north. So we're very rural, we're very spread out, and so our program, and let me just go into the about. So we had 10 counties, like I mentioned. We chose to sort of try to collect information in two different ways. One was focus groups. So what we did was we scheduled a focus group in each of our 10 counties. We scheduled them at libraries, gave plenty of advance notice. We sent out the normal outreach through our normal avenues and areas, all of the normal channels. And then we also created an online survey. And this happened between May and September. And so as you can see here, we got 471 responses, which for our area was actually very, very good. We were very pleased with this, but it was a challenge. And so what we found is, again, we wanted to make sure that we covered all 10 counties, especially since it's so rural. We wanted to make sure we could get as many voices heard as possible. The focus groups, unfortunately, did not bring in hardly anyone. I think out of 10, we may have had 6 people total. So many of these actually, no one showed up. And like I said, we provided a ton of announcements, a ton of outreach, but it was very, very challenging to get people there. So what we did was we sort of focused all of our energies on this online survey. We naturally did social media pushes and whatnot, but we're still being challenged. So we decided to do 2 different things. One, I'll show you here. We decided to go out to the local events all summer long. So we went to, fairs. We went to anything that our community was having. We made shirts. We put up booths. And I don't know if you can really see it, but in one of these pictures, we actually had little QR codes. So we had little handouts with a QR code that they could snap right there with their phone, which made it incredibly easy for them. We were also there to answer questions. So this is really what was a huge success for us. In fact, I think we would have really been challenged to get the responses that we got had we not chosen to take this as our primary outreach. And it was actually great. It was, we had fun. Obviously, we threw on some funny shirts. We wanted to engage conversation. And I think it was far more successful than the focus groups. And so, if there was any type of innovative practice on our end, this is what we felt really it was new for us sort of, but I think we're going to start using it for a lot of other survey gathering, information gathering, exchanges with folks. So that was our big outreach. Here, as you can see, these are our results. Nothing honestly that really jumped out or that was unique. I'm sure that all of the presenters here today are going to have similar findings, but you can see here on the left-hand side, I just took a look at the providers. Our number one provider is Spectrum, but we do have a variety of providers up there. Brightspeed, Norvato is a local company. Starlink, a lot of the folks up there, because we're so rural, they've started using Starlink. You'll also see that a lot of folks don't have any internet. They use their cell phone. So it's a cell phone provider. So that's fairly common up in our area. And so part of the issues that we were having, or that they're having, is that you may not, oftentimes if you can't get regular internet, you can get a cell reception, but there are many places in our area that actually it's very difficult to get both. So that's definitely a challenge up in our northern area. You can see here on the lower left, you have the different ages. We had a great deal of folks between 25 and 44, but we actually really had a lot between, or 65 and plus and above. That's a big part of our population is the older, folks who are 60 or over. So I think we tried to get a good swath. We really tried to make sure that we could find as many people as possible. And I think going back to, again, when we were doing that outreach at events, it was such a great way to really capture people at all different ages. And so that's what helped us there. The bottom right talks about the different populations that we focused on. As you can see on the far left, 328 of our respondents were from a rural area. That also, I mean, we tried to define it, but when you're talking to people, a lot of people who weren't in rural areas, they were in Superior, which isn't really considered rural, I guess, by definition. So obviously some of these responses are based on what they felt were their definitions. Low income as well. We have a lot of low income folks. That's also a lot of the population that we focus on. So we were surprised that we didn't have more low income, but again, I think it's how people want to define, or how they identify. So we looked at minorities, veterans, seniors, those folks with disabilities, language barriers. We actually got 2 who were incarcerated. So we asked as many as we could, those who were incarcerated, and then some that had, none of these barriers. So those were responses. Again, it sounds like right in the middle, our cost responses, on average, 36% were paying between $50 and $79 a month. If you add in the additional ones, if you add in the additional 18% so essentially between, what is that, 20, about 54%. So half of our respondents pay between $50 and $100, which again, none of these responses, I don't think are out of line with what probably most of these surveys showed, but it just sort of confirms what we already know and what we're just, kind of collecting and curating together. So, and then the last part, again, just very simple, very basic. What are the biggest barriers? Like most, it is financial. The cost for a lot of this. In fact, it was several people we interviewed and we surveyed, like I said, they didn't actually have internet. They used their cell phone. And sometimes they could only use what do they call it? Not the burner phones, but they don't even have really a good cell phone plan. So financial barriers were absolutely the number one. The second was the options. Like I said, up in our area, we don't have a lot of variety. And truthfully, Norvado, which has started, is a good vendor that a lot of people have really started to say great things about. We have Spectrum, but throughout these pockets, throughout these 10 counties, you honestly, oftentimes you have these these internet providers that come and go because they just can't survive. And so unfortunately, all of the customers are also sort of left in the lurch when they come and go. But that would be our 2 biggest barriers, are financial, and then the options that are available. So that is it.
Thank you, Christy. And then next on the list for presentations today are Thami Hastings and Diana Rodriguez from Everyone On. Diana and Thami?
Yes, thank you so much. So let's see. To move this side of the way so I can give you the slideshow presentation. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Rodriguez. I'm the VP of Programs and Strategy with Everyone On. We're a national organization working to close the digital divide. And for those of you who are not familiar with our organization, our mission is to unlock opportunity by connecting families in underserved communities to affordable internet service, computers, and delivering digital skills training. And so just to give you a sense of our services, here's just a general overview of the types of services that we provide across the country. And since 2012, Everyone On has connected over 1 million households to internet service, via our national offer locator tool and our enrollment assistance hotline. We've distributed over 6,000 devices to individuals and households across the country, as well as providing over 32,000 hours of digital skills instruction. And so just a quick snapshot of the work that we've done over the past few years. And so to give you some background and context on our project and the work that we did, much like some of the other presenters today, we collected surveys from folks in schools and senior centers, workforce development organizations, CBOs. We also participated in events. We attended food distributions. So basically everywhere where folks are congregating, we tried to get into those spaces to disseminate our survey, some of them being collected by hand and, just asking folks questions, and some of them through survey distributions at those sites. And so our survey was focused specifically in Milwaukee and Milwaukee County. And so that is the kind of scope of where our geography is and our responses are. So to get into some of the responses, again, not very different from what we've seen so far. So of our survey respondents, what we saw is that $70 was about the median cost for internet service. And that includes folks who were paying $0 due to ACP, as well as folks who were reporting much higher numbers that they were paying for internet service due to service bundling. So this includes things like, if you have phone service, television service, and internet service in your home, sometimes those costs are not completely separated. And so, those are actually conversations that we're having about, broadband labels that are coming out, and how the nutritional labels that we're using now for broadband are also going to help us kind of figure out those bundling pieces. And so just, keeping that in mind for this $70 median cost for internet service. Of folks who were surveyed, 51% said that it was very or somewhat difficult to build their monthly internet bill into their budget. And so, again, understanding affordability and its role in adoption is really important to closing the digital divide. And 51% saying that it's difficult to build their internet service into their monthly budget is significant, especially since the ACP program is now going away. And so a few other pieces here. This I won't go over in too much detail. This is just a breakdown of how folks are subscribing and accessing internet service in their home. So our first question was just, do you have internet service, and what ways do you connect to internet service? And so 67% said that they were connected through a cellular data plan for smartphones or other wireless mobile devices such as a hotspot. And then it goes and breaks down into things like cable, fiber, DSL, fixed wireless. And so this wasn't a or, this was an and. So you'll see that the numbers don't add up to 100%, and it's because folks were able to select more than one of these options. Another piece here is that in the past year, we asked folks what they have used internet searches for in the past year. And 80% of them said that they requested information about government services or resources. We also have some data regarding, their satisfaction of the results of those internet searches as well. Again, this is, more information that you all can have access to after this presentation if you're interested. But this is a breakdown. A lot of folks are using the internet to gain information and resources about government services, which is wonderful. And then these are some of the other pieces around tourist information, public health, managing government benefits, and so on and so forth. So at this point, I'll pass it over to Tammy for her piece around barriers and proposed solutions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Tammy Hastings. I'm a senior program manager with everyone on here in Milwaukee. And much like our colleagues and the other presentations, we found similar barriers with the people that we were able to communicate and engage with. The first one being access to or lack of affordable internet services. Our residents stated that either maintaining their internet service or signing up for a better or higher speed internet is a struggle for them, which makes it more difficult for them to find a new job or use telehealth or help their kids with school activities, for example, which bring us to the next barrier, which is access to or lack of digital skills classes. Our residents stated that it's difficult to find convenient times for those digital skills classes. It's difficult to find convenient location for them, which brings us to the next point, which is transportation costs. Our residents were very emphasized a lot how difficult it is to manage internet device, and on top of everything, having to come up with the price of going to the classes and being able to understand better how to use their devices. And at the end, the last barrier that I would like for us to touch a little bit is engaging community members and trust issues. Our residents, the first thing that we hear them saying whenever we bring up a survey or a community activity is, our voices are not heard. Our voices and our opinions are not taken into consideration. And that creates a barrier on them understanding that we are here, that we are not the bad guys and we are trying to help them, but they have a hard time trusting on that. But we also have solutions. So funding and support for implementation of digital skills trainings or other options, more options of digital skills trainings in Milwaukee. The fact that digital skills trainings and computer classes keeps coming up just shows that it is an actual need and we need to pay attention on that. Transportation stipend should be something to be taken into consideration when funding these projects. Maybe that can be an option for those residents that will need help with that. More community engagement activities and increasing awareness and promotion of existing support for internet service. As Diana mentioned, what ACP is done, but we have other low-cost offers, and we would like to propose that we should increase awareness in that. And specifically on the community engagement activities and the trust issues, working with the community is not one event and all. It's not one visit and done. It's something that we need to keep doing and keep moving forward so they can understand that we are on their side. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Now we'll open it up for questions from the task force to any of the presenters that we had here, David, Christy, Tammy, or Diana. And I can start with a question to get us rolling. But
Chris,
please,
can I?
Go ahead.
I did promise Dave that he could leave at 2, which is maybe 1 minute. So I might just suggest if anyone has a United Way of Milwaukee question that they do that first.
Yep, let's start there. Any questions for David?
Hey there, Dave. This is Jose here in Milwaukee as well. Just a question for you. I know that this is an initiative project. How long is this project that has been implemented? Are you looking at continuing? Was this only a 1-year project? Was this a 2-year project? Was this something that perhaps Foundation or philanthropic are looking at a continuation of funding this kind of initiative moving forward?
Are you asking about the Tequity initiative itself?
Yes,
That's a
I'm
part
sorry,
of...
yes. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, Tequity itself has been around since March of 2020. So it began as an emergency response initiative for us as part of COVID-19. And to be completely frank, we didn't expect it to be something that outlasted the duration of the pandemic. And yet in the course of learning about our organization really as a whole, learning about the depth and the breadth of the issues related to digital equity in our community, the initiative has only picked up steam. And so we don't anticipate the initiative going anywhere in the near term, and are strategizing and preparing in such a way that we think it'll be something that we do and focus on for a long time. And I'll just add to the activities that we did during the Digital Equity Outreach Grant project are, microcosms for the purposes of the grant of work that we're trying to do continuously and long term. So thank you for that.
Thank you, David. Any other questions for David before he leaves? And I've been told it's really nice outside, so we're a little jealous there, David. Hopefully you get to enjoy the sunshine a little bit. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Continuing on with questions for our presenters. Any questions from the task force? Otherwise, we do have one on the agenda I can ask if people need some time to think. But if you have questions, please speak up. Until we have a question from the group, why don't we ask this one? What policy implementations are needed for public buy-in on broadband adoption and affordability? What can this group do to help with any of the challenges you face?
Well, I think first and foremost is pushing for or advocating for ACP or any other subsequent program to be renewed. And so, I mean, we know that there are over 20 million households that have connected across the country to internet service thanks to the ACP program, the Affordable Connectivity Program. We want to make sure that that program continues. So I'd say first and foremost that I think the other piece of things is that we ensure that there's always a continuous stream of funding for digital skills classes. This is something that, I've been working in the digital skills space or in the digital inclusion space for 13 years. And I'll tell you that that basic digital skills, foundational skills are still the most in demand and popular amongst our under-resourced communities. And so, that will always be the case. There will always be folks who are needing to build those foundational skills. And so we need to make sure that there's always a continuous pipeline of funding to be able to fund that work and ensure that we are staying competitive as a nation in this digital world.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the group? Barb, I see your hand up.
Oh, somebody raised their hand. I was going to speak, but I don't know if somebody else wants to speak.
We'll come right back to you, Sal, right after Barb.
That's great.
Hi, Sal. I'll go first if that's okay. This is Barbara. Thank you so much to the presenters. I appreciate the information. My maybe quick comment or question is that it seems as though even though the work is being done in different parts of the state, the survey responses seem to be very similar. So, how can we maybe this is a question for our group or the task force, but how can we make sure that the responses that are seemingly similar being reflected as a state as a whole? Like, how are we combining this information, processing it, and really helping to provide either solutions or suggestions? And is there a way for us to combine the information?
Alyssa, can I go? Okay. I think that now taking into consideration that Chrissy is here, for example, and Chrissy's focus is on the rural area, and we were able to see similar results on both. For me, that's a great explanation of why this war between urban and rural areas should not exist. Those are two different areas with similar problems, and they both need assistance. So I think that we should start on that, to not picking one side or the other, based on what Dave Burka presented. For example, infrastructure is a big problem on internet connectivity here in Milwaukee. So sometimes, even though you are in the urban area, you don't have coverage for that. So those things need to be taken into consideration. I don't know if we can put all together in under one formula, because I don't think this is a one size fits all. But you bringing that up just shows that yes, the surveys they have the similar answers and they have similar problems. So one area should not be against the other. Both areas need assistance and both areas need help.
Sal, we'll come back to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, just continue with the theme about having assistance for individuals and families to understand how to access the internet, how to purchase internet services, and so on and so forth. I think Diana and Tammy and Dave kind of mentioned this, and being a United Way provided that survey, and as well as you, Diana and Tammy. When you talk about having funding for doing this kind of work, that would be funding for organizations like yours to be able to have the people and the resources to be able to provide that service. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we, as an organization, and just generally speaking in the digital inclusion space, there is combined funding between foundations, so philanthropic efforts combined with state and federal funds to pull together and be able to invest in communities and continuously provide this support. In the past, we've seen, huge infusions of funding. So, for example, with the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program that came about in Obama's era, and now with Biden's funds, unfortunately, what happens is there's these huge infusions. People grow their services and are able to provide all of these wonderful resources to communities. And once those funds exhaust, then we're kind of back into the space where everyone's grabbing for funding for this type of support. And so I'd say, for that reason, I commend the federal and state governments in providing these types of resources. I would just advocate for, a more sustainable long-term type of support to ensure that digital inclusion services can extend beyond these really large efforts.
Thank you. Alyssa, you had your hand.
I just wanted to sort of comment on Barbara's point about how do we get this all together. And I do want to say that we did not do it perfect, but the goal of all these digital equity outreach grants was then that these reports came back to the commission and we rolled them into the digital equity plan for the state. And so when we submitted the plan, all of this data that was given to us and then data that we collected and extension collected, and so the plan certainly does not represent every story and it does not represent everything, but it was the goal is to have all these, real subject matter expertise with these deep relationships, do this outreach. But the state's digital equities plan goal is to kind of capture all the data, all the experiences, and pull up some themes and set some goals. And it is amazing how access came up everywhere, affordability came up everywhere, sustainability came up, like trust. We don't trust our government, we don't trust our provider, so there was themes that came up. And so I was trying to pull a copy of the report so I could put it in chat, but I did just want to point people to the state's digital equity plan, which is still being reviewed as kind of the source to roll up all that data. I will quickly find the correct link in our system and drop it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Do we have any other questions for our presenters?
Yeah, I have a question, Steve Schneider. The one report talked about 67.2% using a cellular connection for broadband. And I'm curious if there's any insight as to, is that out of necessity or is that out of desire? In other words, we get a lot of people, particularly I'm thinking, younger generation, my kids, for instance, they don't use their fiber connection nearly as much for broadband applications as they use their cell phone, particularly with 5G and 6G coming up. I'm just curious, are we missing an element where we have large swaths in the state yet of uncovered cellular areas where people go hunting, or even, I spend some time in downtown Milwaukee, and there are just some terrible coverage areas right in the midst of the city of Milwaukee where you can't, pull up your schedule, and you can't, do the things you want to do on your cell phone. So curious about that. And the other question, sort of also looking for comments on, is the digital training, needs both in Milwaukee and in rural areas. We've been, doing Bug Tussle University for some time, and I'm amazed at the amount of people that attend and the variety of topics, and we're trying to narrow that down. And I'm just curious if there's specific topics that stand out in the digital training. And, in the rural markets we're in particular, we find that there just is a lack of skills or even knowledge of what to do with broadband once we bring fiber to a particular community sometimes. So those two topics.
I know that we've been responding a lot. I want to give the other presenter an opportunity if you want to jump in with any of those.
Christy, I think you're on mute.
I hit the bar and it didn't work. So thank you. No, so honestly, it's since the data is so similar between the two, I'm certainly happy to let you sort of fill in most of the gaps. But I will say we didn't get to the level of detail, Steve, your question about, well, both of those. One, whether it was a desire to use cell versus a need. I will say on that, just anecdotally, the folks that we talked to versus ones that, we didn't have a connection with, they went online and we didn't have that opportunity to talk more specifically, but it absolutely was about not a desire, it was a need. That was the only way that they could get access. So that was just, again, anecdotally, but that was what we found up north. To your second question, you had asked about, now I forget.
The digital training, the topics that stand
Correct.
out.
So I will say we didn't dive that deep, unfortunately. We asked, I think, like most of the other folks, sort of a series of questions, and we asked sort of what were their highest priorities. Was it training? Was it, and so we didn't dive that deep. And the truth was is that training, when you're comparing, prioritize, or you're prioritizing these situations, is this affordability? Is it, accessibility? Training didn't rise to the top because there were these other ones that were much more important in our region and much, higher, as far as prioritizing. So I will say that it was a need, but it often didn't. It was honestly out of 5. I think it was in 4, maybe even 5 sometimes. So unfortunately, we didn't get the details on that. And I feel like that would be another great, if you wanted to dive deeper, that would be absolutely, you'd want to ask more questions. And I wish we would have, I guess, in hindsight, but we were just trying to capture what were their priorities, and training was typically a low one compared to the affordability and accessibility issue.
And on our end, I would say that I'd say a couple of things. So one is the percentage that you saw, like I mentioned, and I want to highlight that again, is that this was a answer as many as possible, as many as you have access to. So it wasn't just, do you have access to this or this? It was, I have access in my home to internet service via my cell phone and, home connectivity. So in some cases, that was the situation where they have both. And in other cases, it was a situation where they only have one or only have the other. And so I'll mention that. The other piece of things that I'll say in terms of the necessity for having access via cellular only, there's a few there's very specific cases, I should say, where cellular data and cell phone data is a necessity. And that's one, in under-resourced households where, you know, you have the option of having a cell phone or internet service at home, and you're able to leverage your cell phone to provide internet service at home. And so if choosing between the two, you're going to go with the one that you can possibly turn into a hotspot and leverage for cell phone using your mobile device, using your computer via a hotspot, right? So there's opportunities to leverage both using a mobile device. The other I would say is for specific instances where folks have unstable housing. So whether that be due to foster services, foster care, lots of foster kids have mobile devices and exclusive connection that way. Or, you know, folks is experiencing or at risk of homelessness, or with just, you know, insecure housing situations altogether. Those are major reasons for having cellular service altogether. And then I would also just say that in general, everyone on and you know, where possible, we try to advocate for folks having in-home service for many reasons, but one is that there are still data limits on many cell phone plans out there. So, you know, data limits as far as how much you can search, how much, you know, data you can use on a monthly basis without a fee, and also, you know, speeds that affect, you know, and may be throttled as a result of how much you're using of data per month. And so those issues are eliminated when you have home internet service. And so we advocate where possible, where it's not an absolutely need for there to be in-home service. And then lastly, I'll say just real quick is around specific topics for digital skills training. I mean, there's a lot, and everything from, you know, keyboarding. So where do I put my hands on a computer? For many folks, you know, these are the foundational skills that they need to be able to even engage with technology. So keyboarding and mousing, as you know, using a mouse and using a laptop, very different skills in terms of how you engage with that technology. Also, things like online security, that's a big deal for folks who are not familiar with technology. If they are, it might have some fear of scams, of issues of jumping on the internet at all, because there might be, you know, things that happen as a result of that. So how to engage safely online. Conducting web searches, learning how to learn online, you know, using that technology, leveraging the power. I would say email, the uses of email and Gmail or I should say the Google applications that are all free and open for folks to use. General website navigation. So, you know, what are the common things that you'll see on most websites, and how you learn to read one and therefore learn to read most. And then lastly, I would say, and really importantly, is validating sources. So sources of information. As you navigate the internet, one of the biggest things is that we want to make sure that folks are engaging safely so that they're gaining the skills, but not putting themselves at risk while they're doing that. And so these are, you know, validating sources of information, making sure that we're not getting misinformation out there to folks as a result of this training, and helping them to further educate themselves about how to take information, vet information, and use that for their good is a you know, really important component of digital skills training.
I would also add, I'm so sorry, Steve. I would also add that part of the program is also getting feedbacks from our participants, right? Because we put that together, but it's good to hear their opinion as well. So we also take that into consideration on how the classes are going to be organized and how the subjects will be splitted, taking into consideration what they want to learn as well.
Thank you. Interesting. And sort of as a follow-up, our two most popular classes are how to use social media and leveraging broadband for small business. And the leveraging broadband for small business is largely people who are operating businesses out of their homes. So those are our two most. And so I was, you know, comparing that to your experience. The other question that Diana, your comments brought up specifically is with the survey being not a this or that, but a, check all of the boxes, I'm surprised by the 67% for cellular, because national statistics would indicate that, mid 90% of all people have cellular phones. So is there a correlation between the fact that only 67% checked that and the access to even cellular service, or is it a affordability issue where they have to pick one or the other, and they pick cellular more often, but now they're perhaps getting rid of cellular once they have broadband because they can't afford both?
Yeah, I mean I'll also add, so I'll say, I couldn't presume to put a causality on there, but I would say that that it could also be a question of like perception for folks. Like, yes, I have connection through internet or through my cell phone, but in my home, this is what I count on, right? So this is what I interpret as internet service in my home, is my wired connection. And so, there's definitely a portion of this that's just the way that folks interpret questions, that might have might skew data a bit. But definitely that number being as high as it is, 67% of folks, but not as high as you would expect it to be. There's got to be a few variables in there. I would say that for some, though, just depending on the location where our surveys were collected, we did go to some I think it was a homeless services organization. So we did collect some there. We also went to places like housing developers, where they provide internet service in their buildings for their folks there. So that also kind of changes the information and data that we collect from folks.
Thank you.
Very
helpful.
Yes, thank you. And this has been great conversation. I mean, I'm always excited when the questions keep coming. So we really appreciate the time of our presenters today. We're going to need to move on in our agenda, but I want to thank the presenters today for their time and the education, all the questions they were able to answer for us. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Have a wonderful one.
Thank you. So with about 35 minutes or so left in our meeting, we've got a presentation from our friends at PSC on the task force annual report and recommendations for what we'll include in that. After the presentation, looking at what we've done in previous years, we're going to go into breakout sessions, and we're going to dig a little deeper into what we can include in that report. Each room will have a leader from the PSC. We're going to be looking at 3 specific questions we'd like to have some answers to. 2 of these, I believe, are homework questions. So they're questions that we asked in advance of the meeting. What policy recommendations would you suggest for the annual report to the governor and the legislature? Number 2, what topics would you like to learn more about related to broadband, digital equity, affordability, internet for all, et cetera? And are there any specific speakers you would like to have at future meetings? And then finally, we often support our recommendations with case studies and examples. Do you have any case studies or examples that we could use to show support for the recommendations that we are offering above? So we're going to start with our PSC staff peers and getting an update on what we've done in the past. And then we'll be moving into breakout rooms. And I should add that Kristen will be facilitating our breakout sessions. And so with that, I can turn it back over to, I believe this is going to be Mark, Rory, and Alyssa talking about our past reports. Oh, and I should note that Kristen was nice enough to post those questions in the chat. So if you didn't write them down when I spoke quickly, you can look at the chat to see those questions.
Go ahead, Alyssa, if you want to kick us off.
Great. I am going to just go really quick through our 2021 year. If you want to just go to the next slide. So this was our first annual report of a task force. For people who have been here for the whole time, thank you for your service. If you remember, this year, that first year, we divided up into these subcommittees, and each subcommittee came up with recommendations. And then we so there was these different subcommittees: policy, funding, data mapping, active network building, digital equity and inclusion. And then we organized our recommendations in these 3 categories: access, adoption, and affordability. If you want to go to the next slide. That first report, we had 68 recommendations. I think we learned that maybe 68 is kind of a lot to hand over to policymakers. We did kind of pick a top 10, and I just wanted to really quick sort of talk about some of our progress. One of our recommendations was hybrid models. We have seen in our office many more hybrid model proposals come to the commission for funding and get funded. That's not to say hybrid models are working perfectly and are the norm, and there's, but I will say there are more hybrid public-private partnerships than ever before. Increased broadband grant expansion programming was recommendations. I just want to say it's kind of funny, the year after we did this recommendation, the governor issued $125 million, sort of the most in the history of the program, and the most, all the money added up before. And then next year there was $0. And so we've kind of had, so it's a yellow light there. There's been great work on construction and permitting coordination. The Department of Transportation has hired a broadband coordinator to really focus on DOT projects. The commission and DNR are working more closely together as we get closer to permitting. And so there's more permitting and construction coordination happening, but that does not mean our local broadband forward and telecommuter forward programs continue to have local legislation, local ordinances to make permitting easier. So good work there. Progress probably not as fast as we'd like. The Data Act passed nationally and was funded, and we do now have granular data at the household and business level from every ISP. So that was a big recommendation that we spent a lot of time on, and it's not perfect, but it's many, many, many times better. Consumer protections, I think you've heard a couple of our speakers. Broadband nutrition labels that we recommended in our first report are now law. They're being implemented by bigger providers in the coming months and smaller providers 6 months later. While we did not establish a statewide digital equity fund, so I left that one red. We have, as a state, we have these digital equity capacity grants, and we had planning grants. So there is more federal funding coming through the state for digital equity. We did not establish a state internet assistance program, but during the tenure of the task force, the ACP was established and then depleted. And so it's a little bit of a yellow light there. Can go on to the next slide. Digital navigators, while we did not necessarily develop and fund a statewide digital navigator program, the state is issuing some of our capital projects fund dollars towards digital navigators, and those funds will be released next month. So we are putting federal dollars towards that task force recommendation. If you remember, the task force had a presentation on our broadband intelligence tool, but we really do have much, much more data on access, adoption, barriers to price, both from that survey outreach and then some commercial data. The rest of these I will not exactly go through, but you can see there's sort of variable progress on those recommendations in the first year. Again, there were 63 of them. These are just some of them, but I want to really point out to the task force that these recommendations matter. Federal funds get pointed in the directions of the recommendations of the task force. Things happen both at the state and federal and local level that really have been moving the needles on many things that this task force puts forward to the governor and legislature. And with that, I'm passing it to Rory, who's doing 2022.
Thanks, Alyssa. Alyssa packed a lot in. We really had a benefit in 2022. Once we had covered everything, we decided to narrow it and focus on a couple of things most relevant at the time. So in 2022, we were really focused on kind of 3 core areas, active network building, kind of community planning and engagement and alignment, and then kind of more planning focused work and kind of some general policy recommendations as well. So maybe Mark, next slide for us here. So I have the benefit, all of these kind of key recommendations we pulled out fit on one slide here. 2022 recommendations were really quite successful. We've made a lot of progress on these. I think, the first one was really interested in kind of finding ways to, connect community leaders and stakeholders and ISPs together to kind of coordinate better and and build better partnerships. I think we've seen a lot of success in that in the last year or two. Certainly UW Extension has been hosting some great workshops and kind of regular convenings. We've got published lists of ISPs serving different counties online, and a lot of more tools and engagement directly kind of between local units of government and ISPs. I think that's been really successful. Fund and support annual statewide mapping and data collection efforts. This is another great green light here. We have our broadband planning map online. We've been funding work and had big pushes with the Wiser survey, as well as the kind of GeoPartners OptiMap tool in the last couple of years. We're really at a point where we have lots of great data sets, and we've really started to pull those into those county profiles, which you might have heard about in the last couple of months. Tribal engagement, kind of coordination with tribes. We've had some success with this because the commission kind of regularly engages with tribal leaders through formal consultations at least once a year, usually more often than that. And we also had a very BEAD and digital equity focused consultation last year. So that's been a real success, but I think this one was a little bit yellow light because there's always more work that can be done. And certainly some of our tribal neighbors have some very high need unserved areas that we're still working on. So kind of somewhere in the middle on that one. Creating a playbook and a how-to guide. I think it's easy to send some high fives and kudos to the team at UW Extension, some of which were on the call, have really been critical in this. I think in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of success in providing technical assistance and a really great broadband toolkit for how to guide communities and really build that local capacity. We also have lots of data and dashboards. Kind of mentioned this already. Our broadband grant footprint tool is a really great tool. Just a lot of development in the last couple of years on that. And I think really more than ever, we're transparent about where our funding is and where it isn't and where the gaps are, and kind of helping folks understand that. And then lastly here, identify agencies and folks involved in broadband deployment. I think that asset mapping work is never really truly done, but we've had some real great successes in the last couple of years. I think the BEAD 5-year plan is a really great example of a lot of work we did to do that asset mapping and understanding who all is involved in this process and kind of their roles and engagement. So we give that a yellow light just because I think you can never do too much. I think there's plenty of work to be done there, but I think the 5-year plan for BEAD, as well as the digital equity plan we were talking about earlier, really kind of critical kind of milestones for meeting those. So all in all, I think 2022, we had a lot of success with our recommendations. So maybe I can pass it now to Mark for 2023.
Yes, for the annual report 2023, it built on 2021 and 2022. These 5 focus areas were the big topics of capitalizing on federal funds, supporting local communities, workforce development, mapping and data, and affordability. Again, planning, coordinate to distribute federal funds, endorse the FCC National Broadband Map, as discussed in today's meeting quite a bit, as again, endorse affordable connectivity program, and so forth. And the 2023 recommendations, the first one was find ways to reduce or combat the impacts of inflation and supply chain pressures to create a more hospitable environment for broadband expansion. We have not seen progress on this. That's why there's a red light. But again, through the public-private partnerships and local planning coordination, we hope to have those conversations to develop a plan to address this. The next goal was explore and promote available low-interest loan programs that help to support internet services providers in the pursuit of broadband infrastructure and expansion. That is a green light. We saw this with the USDA Reconnect loan and with bonding from counties. The next one up is the Wisconsin State Legislature should consider flexibilities and or waivers to existing state statutes that may be burdensome to federal funding investment. That one has a yellow light. Because it has been discussed in the legislature, but we have not seen any progress made on it. The next goal is fiber technology should be prioritized, but not exclusively required in publicly funded broadband deployment. Terrestrial fixed wireless solutions are viable in particularly hard to reach areas and or as a short-term solution. We see this happening with the BEAD preference, private partnerships, those mapping out of those technologies, and again, the local planning coordination. And last recommendation, ensure sufficient and trained telecom workforce for internet service providers, contractors, and subcontractors to construct, operate, and maintain current and new broadband infrastructure where practicable. With input from higher education employers, Wisconsin should encourage hiring from within local communities to help retain local talent and grow jobs within the Wisconsin. And again, we see this with Department of Workforce Development, tech colleges throughout the state coming up with programs. And again, I think it was touched on earlier, the BEAD Workforce Planning Grant to address strategies and assess the workforce readiness for when the federal funding does come out. And that is it. So, Chris, I'll hand it back to you, or Kristen.
Yeah, I can take it, Kristen, hand it right back to you, because now we're going to move into our breakout sessions to talk about those 3 questions. Again, Kristen has put them in the chat for us to review. We will have a leader, and there's a Google Google Documents link in the agenda that we'll be using to take notes in the meetings. Since we're a few minutes short, why don't we try and break and come back by 10:02? That gives us 15 minutes roughly, 5 minutes per question in the breakout sessions, and come back.
That sounds, yeah. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt. That sounds great. And if you're budgeting your time in your group and one question appeals to you a little bit more than the other, feel free to concentrate on that group in particular, or that question in particular. We'll set out these. Oops, I'm sorry. We will set out these questions again so that after our discussion today, we had such a fruitful and in-depth discussion with our presenters, and we've reviewed a lot of the material, that perhaps you'll be inspired and have some ideas that will happen after the meeting today, and that'll allow us to capture some of that information for the next time. So Mark is going to put us into groups and into our individual chat rooms. When you look at your chat room assignment, it should say group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. Just as we did last year, the Google page that says Group 1, Group 2 is the one that you'll be able to type into. Each group will have a facilitator that will take care of typing, and you're also free to add in freehand to that document as well. One reminder, as with last year, the Google Doc is a publicly viewable document. Your writing in there is anonymous. At the end of the meeting today, we will take that material, preserve it at the PSC so that we can use it for notes for our report. So it is a kind of a live and open document. With that, Mark, would you mind sending us into groups?
Yeah, I'm trying to find that. My breakout room button's not working now. Had it up, all I had to do was hit and disappeared on me.
That is the way it works some days. Yeah.
Well, let me see. Yep, it's not letting me in. So,
Mark, do you want me to take a quick stab at it?
Yep. You're a host. Give it a try.
All right. Give me just a sec, folks.
And if it is not working, we can have this as a large group discussion too. Might that be easier?
Yeah, that would work.
Okay, let's do that. All right. So question number 1, which policy recommendations would you suggest for the annual report to the governor and the legislature? And thank you, Rory, for screen sharing. All right, does anyone have any suggestions?
Yes, I have a suggestion. Policies related to helping increase adoption, broadband adoption. So it ties to some of the previous recommendations related to strengthening and supporting the digital inclusion activities through digital skills, training, digital navigators to help connect households, all of those things that would support broadband adoption.
Excellent. Excellent.
And this is Bob, maybe as part of that, I had mentioned before the meeting that I liked the simplicity of the county reports that had recently been released. It might be a great opportunity to just make sure that the 2022 yellow light recommendations get one last chance. And in particular, making sure that county folks, county government and schools have one more chance to find those opportunities for digital inclusion, the skills training, and also anything left over to build demand among people who haven't yet, to make sure that we have looked at under every rock. When we had the folks on from the Milwaukee County groups today, I was struck by how much they think that there is a difference between urban and rural. And, obviously some of the earlier grant programs have looked at the high cost of getting supply out there, but they were not able to really address these needs for the skills development, the demand building, and programs which can help the folks with lower income, because lower income probably is very highly correlated with the need for digital skills development. I'm sorry, that was a little bit wordier than I think I had intended.
That's all right, Bob. That's all right. Other suggestions?
This
is Brittany. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I think that policies around middle mile development are important. And, as someone's out there who is out there raising capital right now, investors that are going to actually get the projects funded, are looking for portability. Where can we go where there's a ready connectivity and where there's redundant access in order to have reliability? And so I think that carriers have been real protective of those middle mile plans and coordination. And I think that whole middle mile, particularly in rural areas, but I think there's also issues in portions of urban areas where there isn't an updated network. So that's just one thought. The other thought is more funding on digital training, because it seems like sometimes once we have fiber to the home in, we get a much lower take rate than we think, because people just are uncertain of what they need to function with fiber, what equipment they need, and then how they're going to use it, and how that relates to their cell coverage and other ways they've accessed broadband. And then my last thing, and I'll be quiet, is I think there is some value in broadband access as it relates not necessarily to fixed wireless, but to the mobility side of things with cellular, or as we define cellular, because I find that when we do training sessions, and if I ask people, where do you get your broadband, better than 50% do say that they get it from their cell phone. And they don't always, there isn't always a differentiation between bandwidth on fiber and bandwidth on cellular and bandwidth on wireless. They just want what they want, when they want it, where they want it. And so there's often confusion about the different technologies that we're pushing.
We certainly think about this far more than our customers and our users do, for sure. Absolutely. Brittany.
So one of the recommendations from the first report was a digital equity fund. And I think especially in this time where the ACP has dropped off, I think bringing that back up to the state level is a good possibility, looking at it as a public-private partnership, possibly. And one other thought is, as we go from the application process for the BEAD grants to implementation of the infrastructure projects, resources for tracking and the upkeep of information going to local communities through the process. I think a lot of communities right now are worried about the next steps. They're doing all this preparation for getting to the BEAD grants and being competitive, and they're beginning to now shift to what's next, and certainly guidance on how to keep an eye on the builds that are in their area to make sure that the work is completed in a timely fashion is really important.
Thank you, Brittany. Sal, I saw that you unmuted.
Oh yeah, I was muted. I'm sorry. I could always forget about that.
No.
My thought was what policy recommendations? And for example, I personally know that there are certain statutory policies that prevent us from being able to access several federal funds and other policies that create barriers. And first, I think we need to know which are those statutory limitations, so that we can then specifically recommend that those are changed, modified, exempted, so that we can move forward to have better access to those funds. So that's the one thing. The second thing is about all the surveys that have been done. They're very extensive and really positive. We know, whether the issue is affordability, whether the issue is access, what is the issue that is happening. But I'm not sure we have asked the question, like Steve was mentioning in a way. If all these barriers that you have to adopt are eliminated, would you still go ahead and adopt? That last question, right? Okay, we're trying to eliminate, the access issue. We're trying to make it more affordable. What kind of technology do you actually need? And if these barriers are removed, would you adopt? That would help a lot to make policy decisions that help remove the barriers for people to really go to the last step to adoption.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you very much. We've got time for one more recommendation. The remaining two questions that we were going to discuss today, let's just put those on homework. I feel like right now the discussion is really good, and rather than leave that with the few minutes we have left, it would be great to gather some more thoughts. So does anybody have something else that they would like to add here?
Hi, this is Mick O'Malley, obviously a member of the public, just wondering if I can make a comment for our recommendation here.
You can submit one via email or in the public comment section of the next meeting, but right now we are really only allowed to take comments from. But thank you very much for your participation and interest, though. We really appreciate that and look forward to hearing from you. Yeah. All right. Any other task force members that would have?
Kristen, I would like to just echo the concern about different ways that the legislature might make replacements for ACP available. A tremendous number of people are on the network or have come back to the network because of it. I worry a lot about them starting to disappear at the end of April.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to really impact the sustainability and success of BEAD, because if we don't have the customers because they can't afford or there aren't the programs, and all of a sudden we have less people purchasing, we're not going to see internet for all. And so I think that's important.
Yeah, I like that, because that's one area that I think we probably need to circle back on. We're encouraging these ISPs to go into more and more rural areas, get subsidies to help make it cost effective, but ultimately they need digital adoption, right? They need folks to purchase the broadband. And I think anything we can do from a policy standpoint about increasing demand through education about what broadband can do. It's probably what's expected from the ISPs of us, as well as what we can do to help benefit the growth of broadband across the state. So I don't have specific policy or anything around.
Even
Chris,
in
I
the
know you
more
said
urban
not
areas.
that you didn't get a lot of feedback on homework, and somehow I missed the. I don't know how I missed the homework assignment. I missed the email somewhere. So and obviously people didn't respond. So are we going to have the slides with all the policy recommendations? I really like the stoplight piece that the PSC did, and I think we'd all do well to spend a little more time looking at it and answer these same questions again.
I love that too. I thought that was so visually easy to understand everything. So Rory, could we get a copy of the slides and I'll put it in with the homework?
Yes, we can do that. And that was Alyssa that came up with the idea, so credit goes to her.
It was good.
Yeah.
I'll also flag if members recall and still have access to that Governor's Task Force SharePoint site. After every meeting, we post all the slide decks and kind of all the materials from the meeting for folks to go back and review if you want to go back and do a little digging in the history of things too. But we definitely will make that available if folks need it.
And the link to that SharePoint, every homework we send out, the first landing page for the homework has a link to that too. So we always try to encourage the use of SharePoint. I feel like
the homework so we know who to watch for, because somehow several of us missed it.
Okay. I think it's coming out with the agenda, and Mark, I believe you're sending out the agenda.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll try to push that a little earlier, and that way we'll be able to catch it if people aren't getting it.
Thanks.
All right. I feel like the big takeaway from today is that it's not sustainable unless it's attainable, and that affordability is, we heard a lot about that. We heard a lot about that in the comments. I'm sure when we send out the homework, we're going to get comments about that as well. But again, as Gail recommended, those recommendations are fantastic. The stoplights are a great tool. Be sure if you have the time to look them over so that we're getting a really great kind of feedback on where we should be heading over the next couple of months as we formulate this report. You guys have been great today, as always, and I look forward to next month. I am going to end this portion of it and turn it back over to you, Chris, and for the rest of our agenda. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you. And echoing that, great conversations today too. So very excited for that. We only have one item left on the agenda for today, and that is next steps. Mark, Alyssa, or Rory, I'm not sure who's taking that one.
Yep, that's me. So stay tuned for agenda. The next meeting is March 20th at 1 p.m. All right, back to you, Chris.
All right. And as a reminder, we'll double check on that homework thing. A lot of folks didn't get the email, so we'll circle back on that. And those questions we didn't get to in the breakout sessions will be homework for our next meeting. So thank you. I really appreciate all the engagement today. It was really awesome. Sometimes, you know, it's quiet. We're waiting for questions, and some days they keep coming, and that was today. So awesome. Thank you for your time again this month, and we'll see you next month on the 20th for our March meeting.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks all.